organized by Curtin University, Dubai. This year, the theme of the event is the one that is at the forefront of technology, innovation, and transformation: nanotechnology. The technology has already found its way into different industries worldwide. During the Business Cup Challenge, we are going to explore the immense potential of nanotechnology and how it can bring about significant changes to our society. The challenge that we present will be wide-ranging, allowing room for your creativity to shine. This is your opportunity to make an impact and showcase your problem-solving skills. But the Business Cup Challenge isn't just about competition. It is a unique learning opportunity. Throughout the event, you will delve deep into the world of nanotechnology. You will explore the frontiers of nanotechnology, from nanoparticles that are already transforming industries to the immense potential of nanomachines that can change the way we live and work. So to all school and university students, we at Curtin University invite you to be a part of Business Cup Challenge 2023. The event promises an unforgettable experience where you can harness your creativity, showcase your problem-solving skills, and learn about the world of nanotechnology. We look forward to your participation in this incredible event. Let's embark on this remarkable journey together.
A very good morning to everyone present. I am Lanita Narona. I'm the head of outreach at Curtin University, Dubai. It is my pleasure to be welcoming you all to this amazing, another milestone of Business Cup Challenge 2023. You are now going to be a part of a 12-year legacy that has so far welcomed 1,800 students. Allow me to introduce you to the game master who will be leading the workshop today, who will help you understand the layout of the competition. Mr. Daniel Atkins, our game master, has his career in working in information technology industry. During his 20 years in the IT industry, he performed IT services for companies including IBM, Dell, Clorox, Philips, Hershey's, Coca-Cola, and Visa. Over the past 14 years, Mr. Dan has served as a lecturer and academic director in various universities in Middle East. Mr. Dan now currently serves as the CEO of Transnational Academic Group Middle East, which is the education management provider for Curtin University, Dubai, the top 1% ranked university in the world. Mr. Dan, sharing the session, over to you.
Thank you so much, Lanita. I really appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate all of the high school and university students who are taking time out of their busy Saturday to participate in this overview of the BCC 2023 on the very exciting theme of nanotechnology. So let's go ahead and jump into this. Now, I come at the field of nanotechnology from having worked in many different industries that were making use of nanotechnology. Everything from working with Dell, where we were using nanotechnology in the computer chips that we were using, to the Clorox company, where nanotechnology was used in many of the fast-moving consumer goods that we provided to customers. So let's start off with a little bit of a definition. So if we want to understand what we mean by the term nanotechnology, it helps to get a sense of scale. So I'm sure all of you have seen a straight pen or a push pen. The head of a straight pen is 1 millimeter, or about 1 million nanometers. And it's small, but we can see it until you get about 50, and then you need glasses to be able to see it. Then we have a grain of pollen. This is about 20 micrometers, or about 20,000 nanometers. You really can't see a single grain of pollen. If you look in a beam of bright sunlight coming through your window, you very likely will be able to see clusters of grains of pollen, but one individual grain is too small to see. But that's still way bigger than we're talking about. Even if we go down to the size of a single red blood cell, which you can only see with a microscope, we're still talking about something that is 2,500 nanometers in size. What we're getting at today and what we're going to be talking about are things that are even smaller than that. For example, a carbon nanotube can be 2 nanometers in size. This is something that not only can you not see with your eye, you can't even see with a standard microscope. If you want to see something down to 2 nanometers in size, you're now talking about having to use things like a scanning tunneling electron microscope to be able to actually see them. And some of the things that fall into the realm of what we currently call nanotechnology are even smaller than that, where we're getting into tenths or hundreds or even thousands of a nanometer. Now, carbon nanotubes is probably the most famous nanotechnology. It's the thing most people have heard of. And we've heard that carbon nanotubes are going to revolutionize the world. And that's coming slowly. But one of the uses that is most exciting for carbon nanotubes and carbon fibers is a space elevator. Right now, when we want to get something into space, we need to go to NASA or SpaceX or the European Space Agency, and they use chemical rockets to launch whatever payload they need to into space. And it's expensive. It used to cost about 2.2 million US dollars per kilogram to launch things into space. Things have improved. It now only costs about 25,000 US dollars to launch a kilogram into space, but it's still hugely expensive. It's very polluting, depending on what fuel is being used for the rocket. It's quite dangerous because rockets do explode. They are essentially controlled explosions. And it's something that we can't do a lot of. We are very limited in the amount of material we can get to space. But if we ever want to colonize the moon or Mars or to travel beyond our solar system, we need a better way to get out of Earth's gravity well. And one way to do that is a space elevator, where we have a large counterweight that is located at a geosynchronous orbit over the equator, and threads or fibers running all the way down from that counterweight to the surface of the Earth. And climbers, like the ones shown in this picture, would be able to, using solar power to generate electricity, be able to climb up the nanowires that form this thread and get to space much easier at much lower cost, and something that we could do consistently day after day after day. The only problem is there is not currently any material known to humans that is strong enough to create the wires that would need to go up into space. So we're looking at using nanotechnology to develop materials that have greater strength than any material currently known to be able to build the biggest thing that humans have ever built using some of the smallest structures that we've ever been able to design. And you might think, wow, that sounds far off in the future. You know, that's the kind of technology that's always 20 or 30 years in the future. I tell you now it's 30 years in the future. 20 years from now, it's still 30 years in the future. But you're using nanotechnology today. Just to be part of this webinar, you're using nanotechnology. It was not too long ago that IBM unveiled 2 nanometer chip technology. And what this means is that the gates used to allow the chip to process data are only 2 nanometers in size, which means they can pack billions upon billions of these gates and circuits onto a single chip. TSMC has been making 2 nanometer chips for a few years now, and is continuing to make 4 nanometer and 6 nanometers, and they're already working on getting down to 1 nanometer. So the technology that we use and rely on every single day is using one form of nanotechnology. Another use of nanotechnology that you may not have thought about is one that is circulating in your body, or at least was when you first got your COVID vaccine. You may not know this, but the mRNA vaccine is an example of nanotechnology. Using a DNA replicator, they were able to determine the structure of the RNA from COVID-19 virus, and then figure out which spike proteins would be most vulnerable to the immune system. And they developed a map for the vaccine. This process took 4 hours. And in that 4 hours, they came up with the vaccine that we all got. It was then put into an mRNA printer, and it was printed off in massive quantities, producing the vaccine that we all got. So many, many lives were saved during the pandemic by the use of nanotechnology. Now, there are 2 ways that we get to nanotechnology. One way is from the top down, where we take something that is bigger than nanoscale and we start breaking it down into smaller and smaller pieces until we get to nano level structures. And an example of this would be the circuits on a computer chip. The earliest computer chips were printed with circuits big enough that you could look at them with your human eye and see where the circuits ran. And we kept making them smaller and smaller and smaller until now you can only see the circuits with the tunneling electron microscope. And we're having to use extreme ultraviolet lithography in order to print something that small. The other direction is from bottom up. This is where we take atoms and atomic level substances and we combine them together or organize them in a certain way to make them larger and able to function in the way that we want. And examples of this would be graphene, which is a single layer thick sheet of carbon atoms and is one of the strongest substances known to humankind. or carbon nanotubes, which are then woven into carbon fibers that are used for aircraft like the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. So we can go at creating nanoscale structures and nanotechnology from either end. And right now, we're doing it from both ends at the same time. When a lot of people think of nanotechnology, they think of more of the sci-fi aspects of it. We've been told that in the future, we'll have tiny machines that we can put inside of our bodies that will, for example, find viruses or cancer cells and destroy them, maybe using lasers or using micro radiation to disrupt their DNA or RNA. And that technology is being worked on. We're not there yet, but we are much closer than we've ever been. We even talk about technology to go in and repair damaged DNA or DNA that is in some way suboptimal. And we already have this to a certain extent with CRISPR-Cas9 and CRISPR-Cas12, which are something that we found in plants that works at the nanoscale and can actually go in and edit DNA. But we're taking that and we're moving even further so that we can get more and more precise. So what do we really mean when we say nanotechnology? Let me refer to another field of technology and explain. When I first started in the IT industry, we had algorithms. These were step-by-step systems for solving problems. And over time, the more complex algorithms got renamed, and we started calling them expert systems. And over time, we started calling them AI. But if you look at even the most advanced AI, the most advanced machine learning, what you will find is it's really just a very complex, very robust algorithm. What we're writing hasn't changed. What we're calling it has. The same thing is true of nanotechnology. Chemicals that serve a function, we used to just call chemicals or ingredients. But now we call them nanotechnology. Why? Because if you advertise that you're using nanotechnology in your product, people get excited and they want to buy it. The same thing with nanocircuits and nanomachines. We've been making circuits on the nanoscale for more than 20 years. We've been making machines on the nanoscale almost that long. But we didn't call them nanotechnology back then. It was just computer circuits, or they were often called micro machines. But now nanotechnology is the buzzword, so everyone's talking about it. Every company is advertising it because this is one of the ways to get people excited about your product or to get investors or venture capitalists excited. So you need to understand nanotech is used in nearly every area of our lives now. We just generally aren't aware of it. So for example, it's used extensively in the personal care industry. Whether you're talking about your shampoo or your cosmetics, the sunblock you put on so that you don't get roasted in the Dubai summer, even down to the nanoparticles in your toothpaste that help polish your teeth while you brush. So it's all over in things that we're using every day. We just generally aren't aware of it. Similarly, it's being used in some of the biggest things. For example, carbon nanotubes are being used as a strengthener in concrete to allow us to build bigger and taller concrete-based buildings. So whether it's at the tiniest level or at the biggest level, nanotechnology comes into play. And it's not just things that we live or work in. It's not just technology that we use. It's not even just things that we put on our body. It's also things we put in our mouth. Nanotechnology is being used extensively in the food industry for everything from food packaging to ensuring food safety, to improving the functionality of food, whether that be its texture, its taste, its nutrition. This is especially true of some of the vegan or vegetarian meat substitutes, and even in food preservation, so that we minimize food waste and we keep food safe to eat for longer. It's also used in other areas you might not have thought about. For example, collectibles. If you go out and you buy, for example, a signed Luke Skywalker trading card, if you look at the right-hand side, it says that it is DNA labeled. So the trading card has actually been covered in a unique DNA that can be accessed by the barcode. So if you were to buy this and you wanted to make sure it was authentic before you paid $1 million for it or whatever the cost, it could be swabbed with a cotton swab, a PCR run on it, just like we used to have PCR tests for COVID-19, so that the polymerase chain reaction can duplicate the DNA so that it's mappable. And then it could be sequenced, and that sequence could be compared against the sequence of the company that's certifying it. They never reveal what the sequence is. So you would send them a sequence and it would either come back and say, yes, it's a match, or no, it isn't. And considering that there are, in a typical DNA strand, up to several billion base pairs, the odds of getting the right combination of base pairs is so small as to be essentially impossible. So this allows them to guard the security and the authenticity of collectibles. Probably never thought that you'd see DNA and nanotechnology being used for something like that. But then there's the other side. While there's a lot of benefits that are coming from nanotechnology, is there anything that we should be worried about? And unfortunately, there is. For example, micro and nanoplastics or particles are becoming a huge issue. And in recent scientific tests conducted all over the world, it was nearly 100% of people tested had nanoparticles of plastic or other nano compounds in their urine. So it has gotten into our bloodstreams, into our urine. It's inside of us now. And these chemicals are not inert. Things like polyethylene, polypropylene, methylacerate, and nylon are all compounds that can last thousands of years and in general cannot be broken down by any known method. There are some slight exceptions there. And unfortunately, a lot of these products can potentially cause problems in the human body. But these aren't the worst examples. The worst examples are what we call PFASs. These are per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. And there are about 12,000 of these. And we call them forever chemicals because they don't break down. There is no process in nature that will break these chemicals down. So they just exist forever. There were recent tests done, again, worldwide, and 100% of the people tested had these forever chemicals in their system. And many of these forever chemicals, which are a form of nanotechnology, are known to cause cancer. So at the very smallest level, just in the air we breathe, the food we eat, everything that we touch and put on our body, we are constantly getting exposed to various types of nanotechnology, some of which isn't really good for us. And we need, as a society, to come up with better solutions that don't last forever or that aren't known to accumulate in the bodies of animals and cause disease at some point. There's another larger risk, although this is still quite a ways in the future because the technology isn't there, but it's one of the thought experiments that technology ethicists, people who study the ethics and potential risk of technology, think about. And it's called the gray goo scenario. So we already have technology that can build itself. And in fact, if you look at Elon Musk's plan for colonizing Mars, one of the key aspects of it is being able to send up robots that can mine Mars and extract the necessary minerals out of the Martian soil, the regolith, and can build additional robots out of it. So you've got robots building themselves, copies of themselves over and over again to build up a sufficient number that they can actually build the colony for the humans that will go there. Well, the problem is, what if the programming goes wrong? Or what if somebody hijacks or hacks the programming and the robots keep creating copies and decide that they have no other purpose than to just create more copies? So very quickly, they turn every bit of whatever planet they're on into just more copies of themselves. So if we did that with nanobots, we'd have what they call gray goo. The entire planet would be completely stripped of all life, all organic compounds, and all that would be left would be these nanobots desperately searching for other sources of organic compounds to build more of themselves. This would not be a good thing for us humans. So in working with the technology, and I've actually seen the sign that, remember, only you can prevent gray goo. So never release nanobot assemblers without replication limiting code. So when you are solving the BCC cases, I want you to really think strongly about the environmental impacts or the possible environmental impacts of the solution that you're coming up with, and what kind of impacts could happen if the technology got out of its target environment or in some way malfunctioned. One thing we as humans have learned is the risk of unintended consequences. We do something that we believe will be for our good, and it backfires and it has bad consequences. And you can just look back through human history, everything from adding tetraethyl lead to gasoline, to the use of asbestos as a fire preventer or insulator, to the use of DDT for fighting malaria. It sounded good when they started, but they didn't think about the possible side effects, the unintended consequences. They didn't test it enough, and we ended up with DDT, a forever chemical, polluting much of the world. We ended up with asbestos that causes horrific types of lung cancer, having to be ripped out of old buildings and disposed of. And we ended up with people suffering mental retardation or mental degradation, and even becoming participants in crime due to the impacts of tetraethyl lead on their brains. So as you're solving these BCC cases, you need to really think about what the technology you're suggesting could do, what its impacts could be, and make sure that what you're suggesting is something that will be a net good for the world, not a net negative. So now let's dive into the rules and how we're going to conduct BCC 2023. So for 2 weeks, starting on October 5th, you'll receive a new case on Thursday, and your solution to that case is due on the following Thursday. And then our team will go through and give you detailed feedback by the end of day the following Tuesday, which means that you'll be able to incorporate the feedback that you've been given by Tuesday on Wednesday and Thursday to make sure that you have improved from one case submission to the next. If you are submitting in a document like Microsoft Word document, which is the most common way people have submitted, you can have not more than 2,000 words plus 2 pages of charts, graphs, and pictures. If you want to submit in another format, we're open to almost any format: PowerPoint, Prezi, a document, a spreadsheet, even an audio or video file. Although if you go with an audio or video file, not more than 5 minutes in length. For PowerPoint, Prezi, documents or spreadsheets, the 2,000 word and 2 pages of charts and graph supplies. The idea that you come up with has to be related to the business or the case that you're given. So you can't just come up with anything you think is interesting in nanotechnology. It has to be specifically related to solving the question of the case. And a substantial portion of your points, about 20% of the points, are related just to how well it's related to solving the case or helping the business that was talked about. It has to involve some form of nanotechnology, and that definition is very broad. That could be anything from a chemical compound to a micro machine. And it has to be possible. So this is not the time to be talking about space elevators or little machines that go through our blood and repair cell damage. The technology isn't there. So you will need to do some research and figure out what actually is possible given today's technology. At the same time, you don't have to go into technical details. You don't need to explain the technology in depth. The people who will be marking will have familiarity with the technologies, and if necessary, will do a little research on their own to understand it. So this is a business challenge, not a STEM challenge. So we're not expecting you to go into great technical detail. You absolutely have to show how the business plan or what you're suggesting either makes money or saves money. So you'll need to have a financial plan showing 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, however long it takes to hit a break-even point, either on additional revenue or profits due to savings. And then every single plan submitted needs to have a pestle analysis where you consider the political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal impacts. And when you're looking at these, you need to consider them in two different ways. You need to consider where one of those things is driving the solution that you're proposing. So maybe from an economic standpoint, something is currently too expensive. Maybe it's a pharmaceutical that people need for their health, and it's currently too expensive, and you come up with an idea to make it more financially viable. From an economic standpoint, that's a driver. Economics would drive it. Social considerations would also drive that. So you need to consider how each one of these 6 areas drives the solution that you're thinking of. Not all 6 of them will necessarily, but you do need to think about that and write about it. On the other side, you need to think about how do each of these 6 constrain or limit your solution. So maybe there would be political pushback if you tried to introduce something, or maybe there would be environmental risk. So you also need to think about each of these 6 points and whether they would constrain or limit what you are suggesting. So when we are looking at your pestle analysis, we need to see you addressing each of the 6 areas. And in talking about each of the 6 areas, if they constrain, talk about that. If they drive, talk about that. You also need to consider existing and potential future competitors. So if there's already people who are playing in that area, you need to consider them. If there are companies that are closely related that likely will move into that area, you need to consider them as well. Every week, through the first 2 weeks, we will publish a leaderboard. At the end of the second week, after the second case submissions, the top 5 teams on the leaderboard go directly through to the finals, like being on America's Got Talent or Britain's Got Talent and getting the golden buzzer. You go straight through to the final. Then in week 3, every team will receive a final case, and those teams that are not in the top 5 will also get an elevator pitch case. And to explain what an elevator pitch is, imagine that you are at the Burj Khalifa. You've stepped on the lift to go to the top, and you're by yourself. And just before the door closes, Elon Musk steps onto the lift and the door closes. And now you've got Elon Musk by yourself. You've got his complete attention for 40 seconds. What would you say to him to get him to want to call you back and see your full presentation? So in 40 seconds, you're not giving a full solution, but you're giving enough of a taster, enough of a preview that it gets the judges excited so that they'd want to hear your full solution. So every team that's not in the top 5 will get to give their elevator pitch, on the finals on October 28th if you're a high school team, or October 27th for the university teams. There will be a strict 40-second time limit, and the best 5 pitches then go to the final case round and get to present their final case on the same date. So I ask you, please, 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 when you come and do your elevator pitch, make sure you already have your final case solution ready to present, because you may win. You may be one of the best 5 pitches and you get to go through the final case round. It would be very sad to be one of the best 5 pitches and then go, oh, we didn't think we were going to get through to the final, so we didn't prepare a case solution. You don't want to have that kind of letdown. So make sure that you've prepared both the solution to your final case and your elevator pitch. So for the final case, you can present any way that you like. It can be your team standing up on stage and presenting with a PowerPoint, or presenting with a Prezi, or you might have physical artifacts, physical things that you want to hand to the judges for them to look at. You can even record a video of it and just play the video. It's entirely your choice how you want to present. But be aware, just like the elevator pitch, there's a strict time limit. Anything after the 10-minute buzzer goes off doesn't get considered in the judging. So you need to practice over and over to make sure that you can consistently present within the 10-minute limit. Just like you need to consistently practice your elevator pitch and make sure you can present it within 40 seconds. Now, one key difference between the elevator pitch and the final case: for the elevator pitch, only one member of your team can present, because in 40 seconds, there's not enough time to switch from one team member to another. But in the final case, 1, 2, all of your team members can present. You get to decide. So you can pass from one team member to the other any way that you want to. The judges will determine a first, second, and third place, and there will be prizes for the top 3 finishers and their teachers or counselors, as well as the most creative solution. So the judges will have looked at all of the cases from week 1, week 2, and the final, and the case solution from all 3 weeks that they consider to be the most creative will also receive a prize. So with that, I'll wrap up and we'll be able to answer any questions that you've got.
Thank you for the detailed explanation, Mr. Dan. We do have a few questions on the Q&A box. Handing the Q&A section to you.
Okay. So starting off, there was a question about what should be included in the financial analysis. So you need to include your best estimates of all of the relevant cost that will go into your solution, and all of the relevant revenues or savings that will come out of it. And then you need to do a break-even analysis, which, if you've never done one, you can find instructions on how to do that on YouTube or in Wikipedia. There are lots of good sources you can go to for that. So you'll show anywhere from 1 year to maybe even 5 or 6 years of the income and expenses till you get to the scale where you break even. Okay, so the next one, should this be application or new theory? One of the key criteria is whatever you're proposing has to be possible. So it is going to be application of things that already exist to new uses or new ways of using them. We're not looking for anybody to form new theories because by definition, that's not something that would be practical or possible right now. Okay. How long would it take to reach into space with the space elevator? It's generally considered that someone could get from the surface of the Earth to geostationary orbit in somewhere around 22 to 30 hours. Depends on the speed of the climber, but that's generally considered about the maximum speed to get to geosynchronous orbit. To get to low Earth orbit, you're probably looking at something in the neighborhood of about 2 hours to 2.5 hours to get to the level where the International Space Station is. How do we predict demand for our financial plan? Okay, so you do have to take a guess, and a good way to do that is to look at similar products. So find something that isn't exactly what you're proposing, but is along the same line, and you should be able to find demand statistics on that. You know, how many millions or billions of dollars of that product are sold every year, and you could use that as a guide for the volume and profitability of your product. Why would we inhabit Mars if we have all of our resources on Earth? Great question. Elon Musk seems keen on this, as do a number of other billionaires, because they seem determined to destroy the environment on this planet and then have all the rich people go to Mars while the rest of the planet dies out. That's the cynical answer. It makes no sense. And from everything that the best scientists say, it wouldn't even be possible. And if we were somehow able to terraform Mars the way he's suggesting, within about 1 million years, it would get back to where it is because Mars has no magnetosphere like the Earth to protect its atmosphere. Okay, so what are 2 things you listed for analyzing in BCC? Actually, there's a lot of things you need to look at. You need to come up with a creative use of a technology, something that isn't being used in a particular way right now, or maybe isn't being used in a particular geography right now. And then make sure that that's feasible, practical, something that could actually be done. Then you do the financial analysis and the pestle analysis. So you have a number of steps to go through there. So basically the case study responses don't affect the finals. The case study responses for the first 2 weeks can get you into the finals if you can be in the top 5 on the leaderboard, but otherwise you're right, they're just practice so that if you get in on the elevator pitch, you can do a good solution, because we do wipe the slate of all of the scores for the finals. So in the finals, it doesn't matter what you scored in week 1 or week 2. It comes down to how we judge just that final case. Max number of slides on a PowerPoint. There really isn't a limit, but again, 2,000 words. So depending on how you want to spread those out, but 2,000 words, and not more than 2 pages or 2 slides of charts and graphs. Okay, so the case that goes out on October 5th is due on the 12th. That is correct. What do we mean by 2 pages of charts and graphs? So basically 2 A4 pages of charts and graphs and pictures that you want to use to illustrate your solution. So at least one of those charts is going to be your break-even analysis, but you may have many other charts and graphs that you feel are important. Can they send all the requirements needed in the instructions? Okay, so yes, there will be an email going out with the first case, providing the instructions again. And then if there is any need for clarification, you can contact the BCC team and they will help you with that. Okay, so are we supposed to create new nanotech or solve the case study through existing? You'll solve the case study through a new use of existing nanotech. How do we get information for break-even analysis? So we talked about predicting the demand by using a similar product, and you will have to estimate the cost and estimate the revenues or savings based on looking at other products. Do we need to include both the strengths and weaknesses of your solutions? You need to think about both, and a lot of that will come out in the pestle analysis when you're talking about it. But if you feel like it's got strengths maybe in one specific area, but weaknesses if it went into another area, that's worth mentioning. What format? The format's up to you. It can be anything from a Word document to a PowerPoint to an audio file or a video file. So it's entirely your choice. The elevator pitch, yes, it's going to be in real life. Somebody's going to go up on stage, take a microphone, stand up in front of 1,000 people and give their elevator pitch. So pick the person on your team who is most comfortable speaking in public. All those who don't get to the top 5 in the first case study don't make it to the next. No, everybody gets to do the first 2 case studies. The top 5 scores after the first 2 case studies automatically go through to the final to present case study 3. But everybody who doesn't make it into the top 5 from the first 2 case studies still has a chance. If you do the elevator pitch and you've got one of the 5 best, you get into the finals that way. And there can be ties. We have had in previous years where from the case study round, we had a tie for 5th place. So 6 teams made it. And we've had a case where for the elevator pitches, there was a tie for 5th place. And in one case, 7 teams made it. So there's a chance, even up to the day of the final, for you still to get in. So there'll be 10 teams in the finals from both high school and university. That's correct. How many schools and universities are participating? It's a couple of hundred schools and a few dozen universities. What are the main objectives in each of the case studies answers? It's to come up with a solution to the case using nanotechnology that is feasible given the current bounds of technology, that will either make or save enough money to break even at some point, and that would be possible given the political, economic, social, legal, and environmental considerations. Yes, each case is different from each other. So case study 1 and case study 2 won't have any relation to each other than nanotechnology. And case study 3, again, will be unique with no relation except for nanotechnology. There's a question on how you submit your solutions. You simply send them into the email address that will be provided when you get the case sent out to you. When I was saying about the pestle analysis, that something drives a solution. So what I mean by that is there something in the political environment or in the economic environment or in the social environment that is demanding a solution? So maybe from a social standpoint, if we're thinking about water pollution, people are concerned about that. There's social pressure for that. People are calling on lawmakers and businesses to come up with a solution. So that is a social driver for a solution that would involve water purification using some form of nanotechnology. So that's an example. Specific format for making the business plan. No, the format's up to you. Just make sure it has all of the relevant information. So what your solution is, making sure that it's clearly creative use, and it needs to have the pestle analysis and the financial analysis, which shows how it's going to either make or save money and when it's going to break even. But beyond that, there's no specific format. Sources do not count in the word limit. So if you put in a bibliography, that does not count. However, you do not need to cite. So this is not a research paper. We are not expecting that you're going to have academic citations in it. If you do, that's fine. You won't get penalized, but you also won't get any extra points for that. So again, no specific type of citation. In fact, no citations are needed. Is nanotechnology the main theme, or could you use some sub-theme? So whatever solution you come up with has to involve some form of nanotechnology, but it doesn't have to be limited to that. It can go beyond nanotechnology. So maybe the solution is this product, which is based on or uses this nanotechnology, and that's fine. So the nanotechnology doesn't have to be the complete solution to itself. Can you use AI to help with your presentation and ideas? We will be running this through Turnitin, checking for plagiarism, and through an AI detection system. So if you use AI to write it, or you plagiarize either one, you'll get eliminated from that round. So you'll get a 0 score for that round. If you want to use AI to get some ideas, that's fine. Just be aware that AI doesn't tell the truth, and it even has warnings on it that what it gives you is not reliable, that it only goes up to information through 2021. If it gives you a citation, it's almost certainly made up. It does not exist. So you'll actually probably hurt yourself more trying to use things like ChatGPT or Bard than help yourself, because as OpenAI says, it hallucinates, which the rest of us would say it lies. How will the case study be presented to you? The case study will come to you in an email that will go out to every member of your team, and it will just be text giving you the case study to solve. Should the pestle analysis be included? Yes, the pestle analysis has to be included. The pestle analysis is worth about 20% of the total marks on the case study. So if you don't have a pestle, it is essentially impossible for you to be in the top 5 on that case study round. Are there any specific criteria we need to meet to align with the SDGs? So unless the case is specifically about one of the SDGs, the only time you need to think about those is when you are dealing with the social or environmental aspects of the pestle, where there's social pressure or even political pressure to comply with the SDGs, or you're considering the environment in your pestle analysis. But unless the SDGs are specifically mentioned in the case, they're not relevant other than in the pestle. How is the initial stage of the presentation in the beginning? Okay, so for the first 2 weeks case studies, you're just submitting the presentation in whatever form through email, and it's being marked by the marking team. For the finals, the presentation of the elevator pitch will be a 40-second stand-up talk, and the presentation for the case itself will be up to 10 minutes of presenting in any way that your team would like to, whether it's standing up on stage or talking, all the way to playing a video. After we submit the second case study, will the participation certificate come out? Yes, everybody who submits the first 2 case studies will receive a participation certificate. And at the same time, no matter how you've scored in the first 2, please do come and try the elevator pitch and be ready for the third case study, because it is entirely possible for somebody to score really badly on the first 2 case studies, do a great elevator pitch, and actually end up first, second, or third place overall. So please don't get discouraged if you get feedback on your first 2 cases that isn't really positive, because it will pay off in the end when you can take all of that feedback and use it to do an awesome case 3. So you need to be talking about existing technologies or something that is right on the edge. For example, if you were talking about computer chips using a 1 nanometer process, that's going to happen probably within the next 6 months to a year. That would be okay, but essentially focus on existing technologies, just using them in new ways. Is nanotechnology basically a scientific method of experimenting with atoms or chemicals to produce something? So nanotechnology just means that some part of what you're doing involves things at the nanoscale, whether it's atoms or chemicals, which are made of atoms, or nano-sized machines. Nanotechnology covers anything that is of that small size. Will the case study be related to one industry? It may be specific to an industry. It may even be specific to a company. So you'll have to read each case and figure out what the case is asking and then respond to that. If you're doing a PowerPoint, any limit on the number of slides? No limit on the number of slides, limit on the word count. Okay. How will we be judged? Content, length, idea. So the judging comes down to, is it a creative idea? Is it in fact nanotechnology involved? Is it relevant to the case? So did your solution actually answer the case? Is it feasible with either current technology or something that's very soon to come? Did you present a financial case for it showing your cost and your revenue projections and a break-even analysis showing when you'd break even? And did you cover all 6 areas of the pestle? Those are the things that you get judged on. The length really doesn't matter. Again, there's a 2,000 word limit, but we've had cases that were 1,000 to 1,200 words that got top scores because they covered everything they needed to. They just did it with very few words, but it's the content that counts. Should the product be a new product, which is possible to make, or just talk about existing? It can be a new product. In fact, that's a great idea. If you can take nanotechnology that's, for example, used in one industry or one product and say, yeah, this could be used in another industry or product, that's a good solution. Just as long as it's something that's actually practical or viable. Okay, if you're researching existing nanotechnologies, is this more of a research project? It does take some research to do this because you need to understand relevant nanotechnologies, at least enough to propose a solution. but you do not need to cite sources. That is not required. Okay, so there are only, do all teams that are not in the top 5 have to solve 4 case studies? Actually, there are 3 case studies and an elevator pitch. So the 2 practice case studies to get feedback and to get into the finals, the elevator pitch to get into the finals if you weren't in the top 5 already, and then the final case study. Where will the elevator pitch take place? It will take place wherever your finals are being held. So the university finals are being held at the Curtin Dubai campus, and the finals for everybody else are being held at Emirates College of Banking and Finance. Give me just a second.
Thank you, Mr. Dan. We will continue the Q&A section in another minute, just to give Mr. Dan a minute of voice rest. For all those of you who have been asking similar questions, such as where the competition will be held, if it's going to be university against high school, what is going to be, what is pestle analysis, these repeated questions are already answered. So we request you to check the answered section of the Q&A, which has been made available to you for your access. Additionally, these questions will also be available in the recording for you to refer at a later point. So to avoid the repetition and in the interest of time, we request you to refer to the repeated questions and in the recording, as well as the official Business Cup Challenge website. We will share the link with you in the chat box as well. The official Business Cup Challenge website, the FAQs will be made available for you early next week. To quickly answer the questions regarding whether the competition will be high school students versus university, no, there are 2 categories. One for university students who will be competing against the fellow university students. High school students will be competing against fellow high school students. The finale for the university students will be held on 27 October 2023, as Mr. Dan rightly said, on the campus of Curtin University in Dubai. For high school students, this will be the finale and elevator pitch will be held on 28th October at Emirates Institute of Banking and Finance in UAE. This is close to where the Curtin University campus is. Do not fear, all details along with case study questions, case study criteria, submission information will be emailed to your registered email addresses to you as well as your mentors regularly. So please do look out on your inbox, and you can also follow us on our social media channel where the updates will be shared on stories and other statuses as well. So I hope that addresses your questions regarding the high school versus university, the locations, the dates of the finales. Thank you, Mr. Dan. Over to you.
Okay. There's a question of, can we give an example of the case study? Everyone will get the same case study at the same time. Well, we won't send out an example ahead of time. Presenting the third case, only the top 10 or however many, if there's a tie, finalist will have to present the third case study, but everybody should be prepared, because if your elevator pitch is good enough, you're in the top 10. Okay, so again, elevator pitch is for all teams who were not already in the top 5 at the end of the first 2 cases. Recommended sources to learn about nanotech. I'd suggest start with YouTube, and there is a video on YouTube from the Royal Institute in the UK covering what is nanotech, and that's an excellent place to start. The 2 pages of charts, they can be separate from the 2,000 words, or you can have them mixed together. So we look at the word count separate from the charts and graphs, but they can still be mixed on the same page. No referencing is necessary, so no referencing style. So going to the university physically, if you are a university student, only for the final on the 27th. If you are a high school student, you wouldn't be going to the university, you'd be going to the other venue on the 28th. We already talked about the separate pages. The question about, do we prefer narrow or broad ideas? It has to be narrow enough that it solves the case study. It can be widely applicable, but it has to actually address what was asked in the case study. Okay, we already talked about drive. Okay. The elevator pitch we already talked about. Basically, what would it take to get somebody to want to hear the rest of your pitch on that topic? So when you're coming up with your business idea, you don't have to go into detail of how it's going to be made. Just provide enough detail so we know what it is you're talking about. But this is not a technical report, so we don't expect super technical answers. Okay, so we've already talked about the structure any way you want to. You don't need to provide citations. So the rubric, actually, when we send out the first case study, we will send out to you a sample of what our marking rubric looks like so that you can see exactly how many points we're allocating to each section. If two teams have the same solution, how will they both be graded? The solutions won't be identical unless they plagiarized each other. They may have the same idea, but the way they present it, the financial analysis, the pestle analysis, that's going to be different, and they'll be graded on those criteria. SWOT analysis is not necessary. Neither is a Porter's 5 Forces or a BCG, just pestle. Okay, in the future, yeah, I think nanobots are going to be used to cure patients. That's definitely coming. How fast? Not sure, but it is definitely coming. We talked about good background. Start with the Royal Institution YouTube video. You do not need to make any model or prototypes. Definitely not for the first two cases. If you are doing case 3 and you want to make a prototype as part of your presentation, then that's fine. But for the first two cases, you do not need that. You don't need to introduce or define nanotechnology. The markers already know about that. How many teams in the finals? 10, unless there's a tie, in which case it could go 11 or 12, something like that. The elevator pitch will be in the same venue as the final. Your mentor from your school can be involved in looking over what you've done and giving you guidance. But when it comes to the actual presenting, it's just your team members. No SWOT analysis, we talked about that. For creating the financial analysis, if you're doing something completely new, make your best estimate. Try and find something that's an analog, but just make your best estimate. If you're doing a video file, you don't need to physically be in the video. It could be just like an RSA animate or a video with different video clips. Anything like that's fine. Already talked about everybody gets a certificate if they do the first two cases. The finals are face-to-face, not online. Yes, there are separate rankings for case study 1 and 2, but it's the combined ranking of 1 and 2 that gets you into the final. We already talked about the 2 pages. Yes, when it comes to presenting in the finals, you can have a paper script or a script on your phone. Any tools that you need to be able to present, you're welcome to. You do not get marked down for having a script. We don't expect you to memorize it. Although if you want to, you can. Everybody gets to do the elevator pitch, absolutely. Every team, but one person from each team. You do not have to produce any physical artifact for the final case. It's, if you want to, you can. How you present the final case is entirely up to your team. We talked about the sources. We talked about the face-to-face. We talked about the elevator pitch. Case studies, the first two were submitted by email. How much detail? Just enough so that we know what you're proposing. It's not a technical report. Everybody gets the same case study. Everybody who does the first two gets the certificate. There's no need to define nanotech. Talked about submit through email. Political environment. Yes, the political environment depends on where you're proposing to roll it out. So it could be one country, one region, or the world. And it will be up to you to decide unless the case is specific. So if the case says, within the UAE or within, Canada or within Nigeria, do this, you get to pick. But the case may specify. The participation certificate, we're trying to be zero paper, so it will be sent to you as an online certificate. Okay. In talking about the nanotech, do you have to state the materials required? Only enough that we can understand what it is you're proposing, but again, not a technical report. What are the prizes? Trophies, medals, scholarships, internships, and potentially some other prizes that you'll find out about at the finals. Does the solution have to be profitable? No, it can be a nonprofit. So what you'd want to do there is show that instead of a financial profit, it either saves money or does a public good, like saving lives, which is its own type of profit. No SWOT analysis is needed. Word limit is 2,000. We talked about that. We talked about the charts and graphs. In the final case, no, the final case is completely separate and unique from the first two cases. So you do not need to sum up or even refer back. Plagiarism limit, 0. Okay. We will look at the individual case. Anything above 10% is an automatic disqualification from that round. But if we're seeing whole sentences or paragraphs, even if it's below 10%, that could get you disqualified. So write everything in your own words, unless you were giving a direct quotation, which would have to have quotation marks and a citation, and also cannot be more than 5% of the total volume. Calculations for the financial analysis. You would be showing essentially the profit and loss statement to show the break-even analysis. So that calculation, yes. Pestle analysis, I described it. If you look on Wikipedia or on YouTube, you can find some great instruction on how to do a pestle. We talked about the charts and graphs, calculations. The elevator pitch is not based on any of the prior case studies. It's its own case study. The elevator pitch is not added to the previous. On the day of the finals, all of the scores go away and everybody is judged according to just how they do on the elevator pitch and then just how they do in the final. No presentation for the elevator pitch round. It's just a stand up and talk. There's not time to go through a presentation in 40 seconds. Final case study and elevator pitch are on the same day. There's no need to involve AI at all. We talked about the scores are not added together. So, okay, if your solution or prototype is really good, will it be used in real life? We do have an innovation center, and if you come up with something that is truly innovative and could be a business, we will get you hooked up with our innovation center, and you can work on building up a real business plan and putting that forward for funding. And if you get the funding, then you're off and running. The PowerPoint can include embedded audio recordings, but again, not more than 5 minutes of total audio video. And there's not really any easy way for us to count the audio versus the word count, so we'll take both. Okay. Just going through and getting rid of duplicate questions here. Okay, case studies are reviewed. Oh, okay, so the case studies are marked starting on Thursday evening after they're all received. The marks for that case study are sent out by Tuesday, and they won't change after that. The case studies are not related to each other. Oh, where can you learn about nanotechnology? Go to YouTube and look up Nanotech Royal Institute, and you'll find the video from the Royal Institute. It's an excellent place to start. Should it be one major idea or 2 or 3 minor ones? It's really up to you, but you will, based on 12 years of history, you do far better having one major idea than 2 or 3 minor ones. Very often, only one of the ideas is viable, and then the other 2 aren't, and you end up getting marked down because they weren't feasible. So best to come up with just one idea. The information for the pestle and break-even analysis, this is where you have to really do some thinking. You have to think about what you're proposing as the solution, and then figure out what would be appropriate in the pestle or break-even. The case studies are not related to each other. Everybody gets case study 3 because everybody's got a chance based on the elevator pitch. If the first 2 teams tie for first place, if we actually have a tie for first place, then we'd have 2 first place teams, a second and a third. Okay. What's recommended, physically presenting or video? Really doesn't matter. We have had teams win the competition both ways. Yeah, please do not run your case study through Turnitin, because then if we run it through Turnitin, it'll come up 100% plagiarized. Yeah, please do not use Turnitin to check your case study ahead of time. And plagiarism is very easy. You know whether you copied and pasted. So just read your sources, understand them in your own mind, and then write in your own words. You'll never have a problem with it. What's the highest score you can get? Theoretically, you could get 100 out of 100. I think the highest score ever achieved is 85 or 86 out of 100. And that's across 12 years. Can you propose new technology? If it is technically feasible, then yes, you can. So again, like going from a 2 nanometer process on chips to 1 nanometer, that's going to happen 6 months to a year. So that would work. What skills do you get from this competition? Research, creative thinking, critical thinking, analysis, financial planning, writing, presentation skills. So you get a lot of transferable skills from this that you'll be able to use the rest of your life. The first two case studies, they can be submitted as video, PowerPoint, Word documents, your choice. Okay, so everybody who gets into the finals does get a special recognition, even if they don't get into first, second, or third. They do get special recognition that they made it into the final. Okay. I think we have answered it.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Dan. To all the students and mentors, we received over 200 questions in the span of less than an hour, and we've tried to answer all of them. In the instance you still have further questions, feel free to write to us on curtindubai.ac.ae. I'll drop the email address on the chat box for everyone's reference. That is bcc@curtindubai.ac.ae. You may email us on this email address and we will address your queries. The mentors who had questions regarding whether they can add team members, edit the team members, you may do so by Monday or Tuesday latest, and you can write to us on the email address that's now shared on the chat box, and we will assist you as quickly as possible. Any changes beyond Tuesday will not be accepted, and you'll have to excuse us for not making changes further. This is in the interest of ensuring that no students miss out on the communications, case study updates, and anything that is added further on. The registration system will be completely closed, therefore no changes will be made. Students that have asked questions regarding how will we know what questions were asked, how is it that we can go about getting the answers for them? As I mentioned earlier, the questions discussed will be shared as a recording for your reference. Additionally, the Business Cup Challenge team will always be available for you to answer your questions on the email address that's been shared. Feel free to drop us a note there. Additionally, the frequently asked questions will be made available on the official website of Business Cup Challenge, which is curtindubai.ac.ae/BCC. You all have registered using the same website. Just look us up, or the link will be also sent to you via email. So feel free to keep an eye out for all updates. Lastly, the Business Cup Challenge updates will be shared on our Instagram stories. So please subscribe there to ensure you are receiving the updates from all different platforms. What if the email provided is incorrect for one of the team members, and is it still possible to change? Yes, any team related information, be it name, email address, phone number, mentor information, this can be emailed to us on the email address shared on the chat box. Please do so before Tuesday so we can address and make the amendments at the earliest. On that note, I would like to wish everyone present here all the very best to the attendees on Zoom as well as the team members on YouTube. We know you are watching. We wish you all the best. This is another great learning opportunity that Curtin University Dubai has put together in order to offer you students an opportunity to learn how to go about researching, putting your research into a presentation method, getting the citations right, and then further taking your critical and analytical thinking to a presentation to the learned faculty members. A little preview of what university life would look like, a little preview of what the future looks like. So we hope that you will make the most of this opportunity given to you. We hope that you will make the most of this learning journey, and we look forward to giving you individual feedback per team to nothing but help you gain more knowledge through at the end of it. So once again, on behalf of the attendees present here, all team members as well as the organizing team, I extend our warmest and deepest gratitude to Mr. Daniel Atkins for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk us through the workshop and addressing every single question everyone had. Thank you very much, Mr. Dan. Thanks to the BCC organizing team as well as the attendees. On that note, we would like to sign off on the session. Have a great weekend, everyone. And once again, all the best.